It was a sunny day and the ruins of Angkor were majestic. Then we heard the distant rumbles. It was shell fire. Khmer Rouge against the Royal Cambodian Army. The year was 1994, and the guns started our fascination with and love for Cambodia and its people. We started to study the genocide, what happened at Tuol Sleng, the torture centre in Phnom Penh, and Chong Ek, the killing fields. Inga and I have a deep personal belief that education is critical to development. So, after Pol Pot died in 1998, we funded a primary school project with teacher training and libraries in the Khmer Rouge reconciliation areas. We met the local Khmer Rouge leadership, and our program, administered by Save the Children, gathered significant Cambodian and international support. When it concluded, more than 130,000 children had been affected. We also found ourselves networked and connected into several levels of Cambodian society. As this MA has progressed, our involvement has re-energized, including being asked to lead workshops for the Ministry of Education. To critique my practice, I will go back to the beginning. I was a painter, particularly inspired by J.M.W. Turner with his energetic and sublime landscapes. Wassily Kandinsky was another influence, with dynamic, pure abstractionism. This led to a wide range of work, all rather reminiscent of those psychedelic times. The 60s was also the time that photographers became media stars, and Don McCullum was high on that list. In fact, I used his photographs as a basis for some of my sketches. My painting developed into a more formal, graphic style, though my intensity slowed down. Eventually I stopped, in favour of photography as my chosen art form. Yet, despite the experiments in my painting, my photography remained rather indexical. For a while, I wanted to be a photojournalist, but business life put paid to that. Fortunately, though, my job took us all over the world. Travel photography was a staple. I was not aware of the colonial gaze, though, as I now look back at the work, I consider it respectful. I've always been drawn to people and their real stories, and when I shoot street, I'm also looking for stories. Robert Frank said, "Above all, life for a photographer cannot be a matter of indifference, and it is important to see what is invisible to others. My photographic intent is to make a difference." The MA project is unfinished stories, Cambodians that we have known for 2 decades who survived the Khmer Rouge genocide and whose stories have never been heard. There are 2 audiences for my photography. First, in Cambodia, I want to contribute to opening up the discussion about this painful subject. I am deeply aware of the cathartic impact of the project on Sarat and my other friends. And secondly, internationally, I want to reach an audience who may have forgotten or not even know about the history and lessons of the genocide. I aim to put the stories of Sarat, family and friends into context with their positive, future-oriented dedication to education. This is not, therefore, a truth and reconciliation process. It's a multifaceted project with activities that go on well past the MA. Photography, text and video are all part of it for future installations. As noted, Don McCullum and other journalists have always been an inspiration for my work. McCullum said, "Seeing, looking at what others cannot bear to see is what my life is about." And he also commented that he tried to take a compassionate, respectful view of his subjects to give them a voice. Still, unlike McCullum, I am not recording events as they happen. I am going back in time. In researching Aftermath, Sophie Risselhuber has been instructive. She said, "I have these obsessions with the deep mark, with the ruptured surface, with scars and traces that human beings are leaving on the earth. It is not a comment on the environment, it is metaphysical." Her work is engaging, almost poetic, though perhaps a little impersonal. In an earlier work in progress, I created metaphorical work while still remaining focused on a specific story. That story was Surratt's walk through the jungle to see his mother. He left the Khmer Rouge work camp at night, afraid, often escaping wolves. The effect is personal and intriguing, but it's still rather indexical. In further research, I noted Anthony Cairns. He said, "I want to capture the atmosphere that I feel in these big cityscapes." The feeling in his work is powerful, and his solemn use of black and white adds to the mystery. His work seems to illustrate Baudrillard's point that it is a question of substituting the signs of the real for the real. In my last work in progress, I used digital negatives to not be real. I was seeking to intrigue and show something that is present, but in an otherworldly way. The aim was to get the audience to stop and think again about the genocide. The series was well received in Cambodia by local photographers and others. In fact, the title Prayer from Hell came from Ute Chang, the founder of the Documentary Centre of Cambodia. A recent eye-opener was Judy Glickman-Lauder's mix of black and white, negatives and infrared. This was used in her work on the Danish exception to the Holocaust. I love the eclectic and highly aesthetic process she employs. In the darkroom, if the negative itself expressed more of what I was seeing and feeling, we created a print in which the light and darks were reversed. Glickman-Lauder's infrared photographs punctuate the other types of image, without disconnecting the audience from the story. The work is ghostly, eerie, and has a melancholy sense of time. Compare this with the garish faux colour in Richard Moss's infrared photography. He noted, "It's kind of a strange face-off with the camera. It reveals the contradiction between wanting to pose and not wanting to be photographed." Challenging work, but unlike Moss and more like Glickman-Lauder, I am seeking a quieter, more respectful and yet still impactful narrative to do justice to deeply personal stories. In the last year, I've met several Cambodian photographers, including the most influential working today, Mac Remissa. His series, Left 3 Days, combines photography and cut-out models. The story of the genocide has faded gradually away from people's minds, like smoke being blown away by the wind. In talking with Remissa, he noted that he used black cutouts, the colour of the Khmer Rouge, and he saw congruence with my work. I have also relooked at Paul Seawright's sectarian murder. He combined a present-day landscape with details of a past murder committed at that spot. His work recognizes the unstable nature of the relationship between place and identity, and time and truth. Unlike Seawright, I want my photographs to convey a dichotomous sense of place, or even of non-place. I am drawn to the idea that, in narrating one genocide, we can point to them all, rather than illustrate specific geographies. In my latest work in progress, I am combining an infrared photograph with an actual quote from Surratt. I want the image to engage with its implied meaning, yet not be literal. I want to pull the viewer from image to text and back again. I want to create beautiful, maybe sublime images, which only give up the horror of place when studied. And I want the images to be self-contained, to be installed large and presented impactfully. Yet, whilst each bears a personal story, the series creates a compelling narrative about genocide. As next steps, I am continuing to extend our Cambodian network into printing, marketing, galleries, as well as national documentary organizations and academia. This year, we will publish a book in Phnom Penh. I am also discussing a future collaborative exhibition with local photographers. The work is not yet finished, but I think I can now see a pathway. Thank you for listening.